So one of the reasons Albany adopted a sign ordinance similar to this, a tough ordinance, was to change what's happening on Slappy, to make it look better. And the 3-year sunset clause is in effort to make all the ugly signs, at least, change to signs that are in keeping with the ordinance. There's some conformity to them. And in 3 years, well, July is when 3 years comes up for Albany. They will start having to force people to change their signs that have not already. And I have noticed that Slappy has looked better over the last 10 years. Certainly over the last 10 years, it looks better than it did. So what's happening is they are making a conscious effort to change Slappy. And in Leesburg, and this ordinance hasn't been approved, it's still in draft stage, but it's been approved with the amortization in it, because I think what everyone has realized is Lee County wants to be the best county around. And so they don't want to be in the situation where their ordinance is weaker than Albany's, and Slappy starts to look really nice, and 19 north of Slappy starts to look like what Slappy used to look like. So in an effort to keep 19 in Lee County looking better all the time, they were willing to put it, again, it hasn't been adopted, they were willing to consider more stringent regulations. So I think Leesburg, along those same lines, needs to consider if it wants to, it's a balancing act. Do you want to perhaps push some businesses away, or do you want to make sure that Leesburg is going to look better every year in the future? And there's no guarantee either way. But I think that in general, with the more guidance, that part of what this is guidance as well. It's guidance on what can be put in. It's a lot simpler than the last ordinance was. It's fewer pages. So people want to know what they can and can't do. And this makes it easier for them to know that. It does limit what they can do in some respects, but it expands what they can do in others. It gives more ability to people to put signs up in general. So I think that's one of the biggest considerations. And what I recommended to the last group, the Planning Commission, as far as the Leesburg-Lee County Planning Commission, as far as Lee County's ordinance goes, is that you can always repeal the amortization later. I think that the real test of how it's going to work is going to come with Albany in July and coming into the next year after that, when they're dealing with people who have non-conforming signs and are forced to replace them. And they may be granting extensions, they may be taking people to court, or people may just be complying. But you will be able to see what's happening in Albany over the next year, 2 years, before you would need to enforce that aspect of yours. So I think that my recommendation would be to consider keeping this in and seeing how it works in Albany. And if it's a horrible experience for Albany and they don't get what they're wanting, then you can repeal it, or you can repeal it for any reason. But at least if you leave it in, it's a lot easier to leave it in than to see that Albany has done a great job with it, people have complied with it, than to try and put it in after the fact.
And we need to adopt a sign ordinance, because when our moratorium runs out, what we have is not legal.
Right. And I suppose you could just re-adopt the one you have, but then I think, since we've talked about it openly now, I think sign companies know that it's just a matter of challenging it in court and it would get thrown out. And if you don't like this ordinance, we can work with you and try another one. But this is the draft we have so far. I don't know if you want to go through it in any detail. We can talk about some more just smaller issues. I was trying to hit the high points of it. One of the other issues that came up talking with the corridor committee were subdivision signs. I think the ordinance, the initial ordinance that we were working with was kind of geared towards the lots for sale signs, like on a piece of plywood that you would have in front of a subdivision. And that was initially limiting subdivision signs to 32 square feet, which a lot of subdivisions want a monumental sign, a brick fountain or whatever. And we didn't want to limit the ability of people to have nice signs. So we put a limit on the size of the words, but the structure could be larger than that. I know you all don't have the same subdivision growth as the county does, but that's still an issue here. You want to encourage people to have nice subdivisions. If they want to have nice markers for their subdivisions, we didn't want to limit that.
On page 16,
Okay.
that number 1 right there says that the person that violates will be issued a citation to the magistrate court. Which shouldn't that say that you?
Yeah, this is the county ordinance. They hadn't changed for us yet.
This is the city's draft. You passed out more of those? Oh, okay.
It's like one page number difference between the two. Here you go. Who's the enforcement officer in the city?
That would be well, one of them. The county is handling the planning commission and the enforcement of Leesburg ordinances. What's that?
3 years.
It wasn't changed there either. Steve, it wasn't changed there. All right. Which court should it be?
We actually have a city municipal court called.
Okay.
I mean, it's the
We'll
same,
get that.
you know, one is considered a county, and one
Okay, I had
is considered
stuff.
a city court.
Red font here that needs to be discussed yet, the decision
Yeah.
to be done. So
Yeah.
that wasn't clear.
Paul?
Yes.
Like, a convenience store, it limits how much sign space in the window,
Right.
which is currently limited in some ones, right?
I don't believe, you mean your existing sign ordinance? I don't believe it is limited. If it is limited, it's not enforced. This limits it to 25% of the window area. And this is probably gonna be another issue with convenience stores because they seem to want to put up as many signs or paper signs in their windows as they can. And we wanted, again, I mean, the universal we, not just me, think that it's an aesthetic issue to not have signs plastered all over their window. It's not an effective way of advertising. It just makes it look cluttered. So it does limit it to 25%.
If, for instance, the IGA store down here will have occasionally special things.
Right, how much the meat is per pound, what
Yeah.
their special is.
That's what,
That would, yes, that would be limited to 25%, I believe.
well, as long as there's a limitation, I understand not covering the whole window and
Right.
things of that nature, but they do have sales they want to advertise. Of course, they have a sign, but you get a lot of walk-in traffic there.
Right.
Too, and,
Well, and that's understandable. I think that we could look at that and see, you know, roughly what percentage they're using. I mean, I want the ordinance to be tailored to you all. And if that's something important, we can look at it. We just need to figure out a way that if the other side of that, that the convenience stores are an issue, that you don't want them to have too much covered, how we can make the language be non-prejudicial. So we can allow one business to do it, but word it so another business can't.
And it doesn't, signs less than square foot or not, is there signs, is that right?
Well, they do not need a permit.
Okay.
So you still, under window signs, it says, total signage shall not exceed 25% of the window area facing the road. But if the sign is less than 2 square feet, what was that?
No, I thought it was 1 square foot,
Okay.
didn't have to have a permit, or didn't?
The signs that don't need a
It was
permit?
the Marshall's thing, the signs, certain size signs, didn't need a permit, 1 square foot.
Well, that would be defined as a small sign in this ordinance right now, but there's also another exception for a ground sign. If it's less than 32 square feet and it doesn't have electrical, it didn't need a permit.
Okay.
So my argument is I didn't want to create a process where every single sign needed a permit and had to come to our office. That would create a paperwork nightmare.
Right, and now there's, again, the real world, there's an issue between what y'all may adopt as far as what it says on paper and how it's enforced in the real world. Because the county and the city only have limited ability to enforce every infraction. And that's one area where 32 square feet doesn't require a permit. So there's no way that the county or you know if someone puts a sign up that's less than 32 square feet and doesn't have electricity to it, they don't need a permit, so they don't have to register it basically. But it still could be in the wrong place, making it illegal. It could be in someone's front yard.